Breaking news now from 13 News we've been following all morning long, following a plane crash at Yeager Airport. A plane coming in, a cargo plane coming in for a landing, slid off the runway, and we don't know the reason why that happened. But when we look at some of the pictures that we're getting from the airport, you can see that there is a wheel that's still up near the runway, just off to the side of the runway, and one wing.
And there are multiple parts of that plane. When it was coming into the airport, it was coming in just over 140 miles an hour. That's the last report we had before the impact. And our very own Chelsea Spears, she joins us from the airport now. She is on top of the parking garage. Chelsea?
Throughout the day of what people can expect.
Well, Brian, I was actually just talking to airport officials a few minutes ago, and they were talking to me about what they were hearing when this aircraft was coming in here. They say that they really weren't given any indication that anything was wrong with this plane. They weren't communicated that information shortly before this crash happened. Now, we are told that the two people who died were the pilot and the co-pilot on board this short 330. Now, at this point, their names are not being released to us. We don't even know the genders right now, but we are told that they were flying the air cargo carrier that crashed here along runway 5 right around 7 this morning. We're told when that plane came in, it hit the ground, and it hit the ground hard, that wing hitting the ground, then going over the hillside and off the runway. You can't see that plane right now because it's still lying on the hillside in a thickly wooded area. And what I was talking with airport officials, they tell me that was a really big challenge for them this morning. They were trying to send crews from both the top and the bottom of this mountain to reach the two victims on this plane. They said it was really difficult because of just how wooded this area was. So I want to show you guys right now some more of what Mike Plant, the Yeager Airport's PIO, has told us a little earlier this morning.
The aircraft has been reached. There were no survivors to the crash. There were 2 souls on board, and that's the that's the parlance on the flight plan, is how many souls on board. So, but there were no other passengers.
Please tell me what to do.
This morning, we've been able to see parts of the plane on this runway, but we are told there's more wreckage, obviously, where the plane is, which is on this hillside at this point. It was a short 330, again, an air cargo carrier. 2 people killed, the pilot and the co-pilot, the only 2 people on board the plane at the time of this accident. Now, again, Yeager Airport is closed right now. Air traffic is being diverted at this time, so you won't be able to fly out of Yeager Airport for a while. For now, reporting live for 13 News, I'm Chelsea Spears.
All right, thank you, Chelsea. Now, that would have been about, what, an hour flight from Louisville?
Yes, it was about an hour. And matter of fact, when I was looking at the plane data, when they took off around 5:45 this morning, and then we're arriving just around 6:45. As they were making that, they were attempting to make that landing. They're running about 140 miles an hour coming in. Now,
would that be the normal speed?
It's very close to normal because you're at that point, you are settling in. You're essentially coasting in at that point. Now, and when I say coasting in, you're letting the wind do the work mostly for you. You're not necessarily using those turboprops. Now, it was a turboprop plane, and here's the flight that it made from Louisville, and then made it to Lexington, roughly Lexington, and then ran just on the south side of I-64. And this is from FlightAware.com. FlightAware.com providing us with this data and this information.
Mm-hmm. Now, we should point out that is the current radar.
Yes, that is the current radar. So, but still, when they landed, Jack, this morning, we were clear. We had virtually no wind, and what little wind we did have was coming out of the south at about 5 miles an hour. So usually you would land into the wind. Usually you would, but if you have almost no wind, they can land you either way. And when landing right here, because it was air cargo carriers. Now, the plane was making the approach on runway 5. So as you come in on runway 5, which is from essentially roughly the south side, towards Charleston is where you'd fly over. They were coming in there where the slide occurred.
Right.
Now, the slide, we do not believe has anything to do with this, but still, it's that area, that crumple zone that has, has collapsed down to Keystone Drive.
Because it appears from the location of the wreckage, the wing that's up there and the wheel that is up near the runway, that they made it to the runway.
Yes.
So it wasn't that they went into that slide area first or anything. It looks like they made it to the runway. Made a hard landing.
That is correct. And this is, you're looking at the from the opposite side. So Chelsea is at the airport. Now we are across I-77 with this camera. So we've got multiple camera locations, and we have some folks that are down down near Yeager, down there on Keystone Drive. Mm-hmm. We'll go down there in just a moment to get some information on what's happening down below the hill.
And you can see many of the emergency vehicles have left the scene right now. What they're doing now is waiting for the NTSB to arrive on the scene, and they will go down and investigate they'll investigate from all angles.
Yes, that is correct. And most likely there'll be a team that comes in from D.C. to do the investigation, and they'll at least get the initial assessment. They'll get photos. They will get all the planes data. They'll get all the black box information, the plane's recorder, and then that's when they will start to do more of the assessment. Now, you see we have multiple locations here. We have the camera that's just below us. That is across I-77. Up top that you see just to the side of us here, that camera is on top of the parking structure. And then down below, that is going to be there at Keystone Drive.
As far as we know, and what we can tell just by looking to, the airport has remained closed.
And from everything that I heard from the tower, I've been listening to the tower communications. They're going to be closed for several hours as they work to get more of the emergency crews to the scene. Once again, that is Barlow Drive and Keystone Drive. If you go up Barlow Drive in this area, this is right where the Freedom Industries accident occurred.
Oh yes, right.
And a lady who lives right in this area, Miss Green, when I talked to her this morning immediately after the crash happened, she said that she heard a noise, a ruckus that occurred, but she was used to hearing so much construction around there that she didn't think anything of it. But then all of a sudden the police, fire, as well as ambulance rescue folks started to work their way into the area. Yeah,
more of the rescue vehicles leaving the airport right now. And just about every piece of rescue equipment available in Kanawha County was sent to the airport earlier this morning, because at first, when we first got word of the plane crash, we were not sure how big of an airplane it was, how big of an aircraft, how many people were on board. There were earlier reports that more people were on board. But as we know now, 2 people were on board, the pilot and co-pilot, and both of them are deceased right now and were killed in that crash. Still on the scene there, and she's up on the parking garage at the airport. Chelsea?
Well, Jack, you were just talking about how we weren't sure exactly what type of plane this was when we first got here, and that's exactly the case. All we were hearing was this was a level 3 emergency, which means there's an aircraft involving 15 to 30 people. That has since evolved. We're now learning there was only 2 people on board this plane at the time of the crash. Both of those people are now confirmed dead, the pilot and the co-pilot of the air cargo carrier. Now, if I step out of the way here, this is a live look at what's going on here right now. Still a very active scene, even though several emergency responders have left. Now, right now we're told the National Transportation Safety Board, they are on their way out here. They're going to be turning this from a recovery phase and into an investigation. So what they're doing, they're actually probably going to be leaving that plane where it is, trying not to move anything so they can try to recreate what happened here a little earlier this morning. Right now, no word on what that cause was, but what the NTSB is going to be doing, trying to figure out if this was a mechanical failure of some sort or something else that happened here right around 7 this morning. We're told this plane was coming to Yeager Airport from Louisville. It departed from Louisville right around 5:40 this morning and came here around 6:50 this morning, right when that crash happened. Again, the NTSB is going to be trying to figure out what caused this plane crash, this short 3:30 plane crash a little earlier this morning. So we're going to be staying out here trying to get more information for you guys. Airport officials are up here with us now, so we're going to try and see if we can get more information from them for you now. Again, no names being released of the 2 people who are confirmed dead.
Chelsea?
For now, reporting live for 13 News, I'm Chelsea Spears.
Chelsea, I was wondering, did Mr. Plants give you any idea of how long the airport would be closed?
He said they are trying to open it as soon as possible, but right now, no word. He said right now they're just trying to follow along with what the NTSB needs right now as they continue this investigation. He says they're hoping to have it open sooner rather than later, but right now all air traffic's being diverted because that plane is still on this hillside. They are still trying to work and investigate what happened here around 7 this morning.
All right. I would imagine most of the early morning flights had already taken off. Maybe one or two.
Yes, from everything that I was looking at, data, information, and also from what I could hear with traffic control, was that there were still a couple of planes that were waiting to take off. And which, by the way, in regards to information on the plane, I can tell you this. And the intersection, can we get Chelsea shot up here and look at those the parts there on the runway, because there's still parts of that plane that are left. The only thing that we can see is the wing.
Right.
So
just a pan left a little bit.
Yeah, just a hair bit to the left there, so we can see that next to the fire truck. There's some of those parts of the plane.
There we go.
Yes, right in that area. And what you can see there is part of the wing that's there, as well as the wheel that is on there, that's sitting there. This is registered to Air Cargo. And they are based out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. That's where the home office is based out of. Now, the engine was certified. It's a Pratt & Whitney turboprop engine, and it was certified as airworthy on December 23rd, 2003. That's the last airworthiness. And now they go through inspections annually, but they have to make sure they go over the engines completely, at certain times.
Does it mention the age of that plane?
The age of the plane, looking at that, and it says this was manufactured in 1989. So we're.
It's not. There are many planes older than that. They're
much older than that.
Every day. Yeah.
Yes, and the plane, we do have a picture of what the plane is supposed to look like. This is not the exact aircraft, but it is a turboprop. You can see twin turboprop. The standard piloting procedure is one pilot, one co-pilot. And also the information that we have on this plane is that it makes the trip nightly to Louisville and back to Charleston as well. Usually it's contracted, from what information we have, with Louisville being to UPS.
So the crew would be very familiar with the routes and with the airport.
I have spoken with a person who has interacted with this flight crew, at least with the flight crew in the last year that have been assigned to this plane, and he said they're very, very good people. They were younger, but and when I say younger, don't know the exact age, but he said they were younger, but they were always nice to interact with, and some good folks there. But that Pratt & Whitney plane, they actually make large commercial engines that are installed on airplanes, and they can be anywhere from a C-17 to an F-22. Those are the various planes that they're usually working with.
Right. Excuse me. Once again, that's the shot from across I-77, looking back at the airport right now. And Chelsea's going to move to a different location and get more information for us if she can.
Do we have more sound from Mike Plant? Okay, we're working on that. I did hear him say earlier that they were having to access this by four-wheelers, ATVs, to get to this site. And when we originally were looking at the response, matter of fact, Jack, I was sitting there in the newsroom, and this was right at 7. It was about 6:54, 6:55, and I heard. And actually, there's some of the emergency response vehicles that are actually down below, and we don't know specifically if that's the site. It should be over to the left here, or which would be off to the northeast.
Well, you can see how rugged the terrain is there. For them to be able to get up the side of that.
Yeah, they've had to do so much mitigation with this hillside to be able to set up so that this runway is essentially propped up here. But it's going to be just off to the left of that, or just off to the northeast of that location. But you've got to come up with these winding roads.
Right. Yeah.
And we have more information from Mike Plant at Yeager Airport now.
Oh, okay. We will have that.
We will have that here in
shortly.
just a moment. They're working on the back, but everything I know. I've flown in and out of the airport. We've all flown in and out of the airport, but I've flown in private planes out in and out of there with flight instructors, and this is one of the hardest airports to land at.
Right. And you when you're on a flight coming into Yeager, especially if it's on a day when there's bad weather, you're more on a white knuckle flight than ever before. But on a day like today that's pretty calm and sunny and clear, you don't really get as nervous.
Yes, and the weather in regards to the radar was clear. They had low ceilings. When I say low ceilings, the cloud base was fairly low, but it was not low enough that they could not see the runway.
Right. Now we got the Mike Plants.
The NTSB is involved in order to their mission is safety. So they want to figure out if it was a mechanical situation or some other type of situation, so that if that we can learn from what happened and prevent future reoccurrences of that if it's preventable.
All right, so once again, Mike describing what the NTSB will be doing when they get on the scene, and that will be, I would imagine, quite a lengthy investigation.
Now, it is a lengthy investigation, and when it comes to the full scope of the investigation, usually these take anywhere from 9 months to just about a year.
Until they make the final determination.
Until they make the final determination. And also, for those of us who are watching us right now on Facebook Live, this has happened in Charleston, West Virginia. This is at Yeager Airport, which is based on the north and northeast side of downtown Charleston. The plane was coming in for a landing on runway 5. As it attempted to make the landing, we are told it was a hard landing, and while yes, it was a hard landing, they weren't even able to make it past the runway intersection there. The old runways run there, you can see left to right essentially from that, but they were coming in essentially where that orange arrow is. They were coming in from that way.
And then skidded off the runway and over that hillside there. And as you can see, it's a heavily wooded area, a couple of trails going near that area, but still very hard to get to.
I just got this information just in, and the one thing that I'm being told is that plane was probably, and this is the information that I'm getting. I'm looking at the actual plane data. The plane data, it was coming in at about anywhere between it's about 140 miles an hour. That was about the last report that we had. It was at 1,600 feet, and it was reported at about 140 miles an hour. Typical speeds for landing in that location would be about 85 knots, which 85 knots times 1.15, that'll get you to about 90 miles an hour. So that could be a factor. The kicker about this is a very heavy plane. They're clearly carrying cargo, a lot of weight on that plane, so that could be the difference. And this is also, I mean, I'm literally just getting these messages in from a person who's flown into that airport, private planes, and it said runway 5 is a tricky one because the wind blows up right at the end of the runway. And I've been in the private planes when this happens. It rattles you a bit. There may have been they may have been compensating for something that might have stopped whether it be an engine that failed, but there was no indication on the radio. There was no mayday. There was no call for help. There was no communication with the tower that there was something wrong.
All right, we're going to go with more of the interview with Mike Plants now, talking about that very same topic, if there was any indication at all to anybody at the airport that they were having problems.
Not that we're aware of. Not that we're aware of. We've talked to the tower. They've not indicated that there was any other information other than the basics. So I'm reluctant to speculate about things because in the sort of fog of the moment, like we've already had this morning, they misidentified the owner of the aircraft. Information's coming quickly from a variety of sources, and so sometimes you get erroneous information out there. So
once again, no indication apparently that we know of, at least at this time, about any mechanical problems or problems with the airplane from the crew as they were coming in.
And you're looking at what you see off to the left there. That's the runway where the cross section occurs. This is where you would, you can see the American Eagle flight that's sitting back there, in which they were actually taxiing. They were preparing to take off as this plane was coming in. I do remember seeing that on the note, because we actually were looking at the planes that were about to take off, that had taken off. But we are looking across I-77 and across the Elk River to that area, and you can see in the distant area, that's the radar that's spinning, and also that's a general aviation area, and that's where they would go to. They would actually land, get down to the end of the runway, make the circle back, and then taxi down that area. And there's a look at, and actually that's going to be the engine there.
Oh yeah, right there. That was blocked by a fire truck before, but you can see the entire wing there with the engine, and just to the side of the runway. And then if you look to the right, you see a tire, a wheel, and also part of the landing gear, I would imagine, just a few feet away, just a few feet to the right of that wing.
And I'm going to try and do some measurements to see if I can see about how far, because I'm going to try and look from the end of the runway to that location, kind of see a distance about where that crash area starts, because that's actually going to be critical in what we can see here and from where that accident has occurred. Can we have Mike pull out on that shot just a hair bit, and I'd be able to get a much better sense of where that wing and that is located.
Yeah, if we could, yeah, here we go. We're pulling out just a little bit. Maybe you can get a sense of how far from the end of the runway that location is.
Yeah, that's okay. So I can see that there. That is, boy, I'm just looking across and having to reference towers and the top of the building. That is, that's not even a third of the runway. So that's. And when I say that's not even a third of the runway, they should have their touchdown on their wheels should have occurred just off to the where you see that fire truck off on the left side. Mm-hmm. That's essentially where their wheels should have touched down. So they should have been at that point. They should have been cruising somewhere between 85 to 100 miles an hour, but the last last data that was transmitted from the plane was that they were moving about 140 miles an hour. So that is a hard landing.
Yes, right.
You can now with that plane, it is loaded down with cargo. So there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that we're having to figure out. And I'm looking at. I'm just trying to look at how far they're traveling, where they could have touched down. They could have touched down, another 50 yards, 50 to 100 yards off to the left of that picture, mm-hmm. or they could have touched down another 50, 100 the other way. I mean, that's what they give you targets essentially that you have to make. So that that they say, okay. This is your prime landing area, and you can see all the markings on the runway.
All right, let's go back to Chelsea now. Chelsea Spears is live at Yeager Airport right now. She's changed locations. We're going to see what she has for us now. Chelsea?
Jack and Brian, that's right. Actually, airport officials moved us from the top of a Yeager Airport garage to where we're standing now, which is actually we had to go through the airport to get here. But we're actually getting a little bit of a better view of some of the wreckage that's still lying on runway 5 here after this plane crash right around 7 this morning. You can see what looks like the wing of the plane lying just behind some of this crime scene tape. Now, this isn't the first fatal crash we've seen here at Yeager Airport. Unfortunately, the last fatal crash was last year, a Cessna plane going up in flames and killing someone who was actually training another pilot at the time. That was our last fatal crash. We also, before that, probably the last fatal one, Mike Plant with the PIO of Yeager Airport says was probably in the 70s. So this is the most recent crash we're looking at this morning. Folks, still a very active scene here. Ambulances still here. Deputies Charleston police officers, state police officers, airport crews, all here. You can see them right now just on that hillside where the plane is lying, just dozens, hundreds of feet below them right now. So that's what's going on right now. The National Transportation Safety Board is arriving here trying to figure out what caused this crash. Right now, that's still unclear, but I was talking with Mike Plant. He says that when this aircraft was coming in, they really had no indication that there was any sort of mechanical errors up until the time this plane crashed. So at this point, the cause of this crash is still under investigation. This is still a very active scene out here as crews try to piece together what happened here when this plane landed and crashed, killing the pilot and the co-pilot. Jack and Brian.
All right. Thank you, Chelsea. And now we're going to hear more from Mike Plant now, who this was from about an hour ago?
Yes, about an hour ago now.
Our main focus is on that crash site right now, and the people, all the people involved and associated with that. But we also have the airport to reopen, and we'll do that. Everything will be done in a step-by-step, methodical basis, as described in our emergency plan. And
all right, so still no information, concrete information about when the airport will reopen, but I imagine they would try to do that as soon as possible.
And the last accident that we had at Yeager Airport, it took a number. We were looking at about 3 to 5 hours. I can't remember the exact time. I know it was more than 3, but less than 6 for sure. The last person to die in an air crash at the airport, friend of mine, Brenda Gillen. She was a flight instructor, and from everything that we know from the NTSB was that was mechanical error, but that was a private plane. Right. There was a student in that plane. She was a very experienced pilot, wonderful woman, but she was the last person to die at the airport, friend of everyone there, and I'm sure she knew this flight crew, considering they were based out of Charleston.
Right. All right, so we're continuing to follow this story. And, of course, we will have a complete wrap-up for you on 13 News at noon, and we'll continue here on Facebook as well. And check in with Chelsea and with the different camera locations that we do have in and around the airport right now. As soon as we can get any closer, or as soon as we see any more activity in the area, the exact area of the crash, we'll be sure to bring that to you.
In the top left corner of your screen, this is the airport itself. This is the air cargo carriers. This is the company. Originally, they're contracted UPS. Originally, we reported it was Mountain Air. That was the information that we had. That has since been corrected by the airport authorities that this is air cargo carriers. They're based out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Now, the plane, as it came in to make the landing, it was landing on runway 5. And 5 is essentially where that orange arrow is. It went off to the side there as it made that hard landing. Now, when you come in across Coonskin Park from essentially the north side of the airport, as people would say, the northeast side of it, that is runway 23. But this was runway 5. They were coming in over downtown Charleston. This was a flight path. You can see from Louisville. They get to Lexington, and then they run essentially on the south side of I-64. That is the normal path for this flight. I've researched this flight over and over again, and this is like clockwork how they do this flight path. This is from FlightAware.com, crediting the information coming from FlightAware.com. And everything in the flight, Jack, and this is a look at the current radar imagery, by the way, that's matched up with this flight path. But everything that I have looked at on the flight data, because it reports every about 45 to 60 seconds, the data comes back from the aircraft that's reporting GPS information. Nothing looked abnormal in this flight at all. The only thing that looks abnormal is ground speed when they make the landing.
All right, we're going to go back one more time to Chelsea Spears, who is live out at Yeager Airport. Chelsea?
Well, Jack, we do want to remind you guys at home, the airport is closed right now to the public. All air traffic is being diverted because of this crash that's happening just behind me, because crews are still trying to investigate and figure out what happened here a little earlier. But actually, when I was coming through the airport to get up here, we were seeing there were some decent lines in the airport. So make sure all your friends, your family members who are flying out of Yeager know the airport is closed. All air traffic is being diverted because this is still an active scene. Now, the National Transportation Safety Board, they're still working to get out here, figure out what caused this crash just a little earlier this morning. As soon as we learn more about what caused it, we will, of course, let you guys at home know as well. Jack and Brian.
All right, Chelsea, thanks. Great reporting out there this morning. And we, of course, will have a full wrap-up for you on 13 News at noon.
And we'll make sure that we look at everything from weather data to the flight data that was reported to FlightAware.com, and also try and get you images from the actuals from the scene from the aircraft. But once again, that is an extremely wooded area. Four-wheelers are essentially the only way to access that.
All right, thanks for staying with us. Have a good morning.